When a woman dedicates her entire career to keeping a company from plunging off the cliff, she never imagines she'll have to battle the CEO's own son, a man who lives off his last name, more enchanted by buzzwords than balance sheets. But when he dismisses her final warning and laughs it off in front of the entire board, she understands one thing this time. She won't save the company. She'll let the truth drown it. And when that 80% profit crash hits, the board will know exactly who lit the match. My name is Rachel Morgan, and I've spent 12 years keeping Bridgestone Dynamics from eating itself alive. 36 years old, 1,500 risk assessments filed, 0 catastrophic failures on my watch, until today. The Chicago skyline cuts through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our 42nd floor conference room, all steel and ambition against the October sky. I arrive at 7:30 a.m. sharp, as always, my leather portfolio containing what might as well be a bomb. Inside 47 pages of data showing exactly how we're about to violate federal regulations, breach payment processor agreements, and trigger a compliance nightmare that would make Enron look like a parking violation. The conference room fills slowly. First comes Marcus from legal, his eyes meeting mine with that particular exhaustion reserved for those who see disasters coming but lack the authority to stop them. Then the CFO, Jennifer, scrolling through her phone with the practiced indifference of someone who's learned to pick her battles. The marketing team clusters near the coffee station, their nervous energy crackling like static before a storm. And then he arrives. Ethan Caldwell, 30 years old, 3 years out of his MBA program, 6 months into his role as Chief Innovation Officer, a title his father created specifically for him. He strides in wearing a Tom Ford suit that costs more than most people's monthly mortgage, his Harvard tie clip catching the light like a warning sign. His laugh fills the room before his words do. That particular brand of confidence that comes from never having felt the ground give way beneath your feet. Morning, team. He claps his hands once, sharp as a gunshot, ready to revolutionize customer retention. I watch him work the room, all practiced charm and inherited authority. He shakes hands, drops references to thought leaders, sprinkles in disruption rhetoric like seasoning on overcooked meat. When he finally acknowledges me, it's with the kind of smile you'd give a piece of furniture, present, necessary, but ultimately forgettable. Rachel. He nods, already looking past me. I assume you've prepared your usual documentation. The weight of the portfolio in my hands feels heavier. Usual documentation. As if 12 years of keeping this company legally afloat amounts to paperwork, he'll flip through during bathroom breaks. The conference room's atmosphere shifts when CEO Robert Caldwell enters at 8 a.m. precisely, where Ethan is all performance. His father is presence, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who built this company from a garage startup to a $5 billion fintech giant. He takes his seat at the head of the table, and suddenly everyone remembers why they're here. "Let's begin," Robert says, his voice carrying the authority of someone who's never had to repeat himself. I study the dynamics as the meeting starts. Robert's eyes track his son with a mixture of hope and something else. Doubt, maybe, or the particular exhaustion of a parent who knows their child's limitations but can't admit them. The board members arrange themselves in careful positions, close enough to show support, far enough to claim plausible deniability if things go south. Ethan launches into his presentation about Operation Retain, his revolutionary approach to reducing customer churn. The slides are beautiful, all gradient backgrounds and sans serif fonts, statistics cherry-picked and massaged until they tell the story he wants. He talks about hiding unsubscribe buttons, about friction points and commitment devices, about charging customers for services they've tried to cancel. My stomach turns, but my face remains neutral. This is what $20,000 conference room chairs and climate-controlled air do. They make even the most egregious violations sound like innovation. The moment arrives at 9:17 a.m., right after Ethan finishes his crescendo about maximizing customer lifetime value through strategic friction. I stand, my movements deliberate, and place the portfolio on the conference table with a soft thud that somehow echoes in the silence. Before we proceed, I begin, my voice cutting through the residual enthusiasm like a scalpel. I need to present the risk assessment for Operation Retain. Ethan's jaw tightens, but his smile remains plastered on. Of course, Rachel. Though I'm sure we've addressed any concerns in the implementation framework. I open the binder to page 1. The title reads, Critical Compliance Violations and Projected Financial Impact. No euphemisms, no corporate speak, just facts arranged like bullets in a chamber. Current chargeback rates are at 2.7%, I state, flipping to the first chart. The threshold for our payment processor to initiate a review is 3%. Operation Retain, as proposed, will push us to an estimated 4.2% within 30 days. Jennifer, the CFO, leans forward. Marcus from legal stops typing on his laptop. Furthermore, I continue, turning to the next section, hiding unsubscribe functions violates Section 5 of our merchant agreement. The penalties begin at $50,000 per violation, with the possibility of account termination. These are worst-case scenarios, Ethan interrupts, his Harvard debate training kicking in. We're talking about optimization, not deception. I flip to page 17. This is the rolling reserve clause you signed when you negotiated our new payment processing contract 3 months ago. It states that if chargebacks exceed 3%, they can withhold 30% of our revenue for 90 days. The room temperature seems to drop. Robert Caldwell's eyes narrow, moving between his son and the document. That's $30 million per month locked away, I add, letting the number hang in the air like a noose. Our cash flow projections show we'd miss vendor payments by week 6. Ethan stands now, his performance mode fully activated. He walks to my binder and, in one smooth motion, closes it. The snap of paper and leather is sharp as a slap. These conclusions, he says, his voice dripping with practiced condescension, are based on assumptions that simply aren't relevant to our innovative approach. We're not some traditional company bound by outdated thinking. He turns to address the room, his back to me. This is exactly the kind of fear-based resistance that keeps companies from achieving greatness. We can't let spreadsheet paralysis prevent us from seizing market opportunities. A few of the younger executives nod. The marketing team exchanges glances. Someone actually starts slow clapping before catching Robert's expression and stopping mid-gesture. Rachel, Ethan continues, finally turning back to me with that practiced smile. I appreciate your thoroughness, but we're moving forward. The decision has been made. I look around the room. Jennifer avoids my eyes. Marcus stares at his legal pad. Even Robert seems to be studying the wood grain of the conference table with unusual intensity. The truth sits in my binder like evidence at a crime scene nobody wants to acknowledge. I understand, I say, my voice absolutely level. I'd like this recorded in the minutes that the risk assessment was presented and dismissed. Noted, Ethan says quickly, already moving back to his slides. Now, let's discuss implementation timelines. I gather my binder, feeling the weight of every page, every chart, every warning that will be ignored. As I return to my seat, I catch Marcus's eye. He gives the slightest shake of his head, not disagreement, but resignation. We both know what's coming. The meeting continues for another hour. Ethan assigns roles, sets deadlines, builds enthusiasm like he's conducting an orchestra of the willfully blind. They discuss customer psychology, retention metrics, competitive advantages. Not once does anyone mention the word illegal. Not once does anyone ask to see my data again. At 10:45 a.m., as the meeting winds down, Robert finally speaks directly to me. Rachel, I trust you'll support the team in this initiative. The question hangs between us. 12 years of loyalty, of catching problems before they became disasters, of being the guardrail between ambition and catastrophe, all reduced to this moment. I'll fulfill my responsibilities, I answer, each word carefully chosen. He nods, satisfied with the ambiguity. Ethan is already high-fiving the marketing team, planning launch parties, living in a future where consequences are for other people. As I leave the conference room, binder clutched against my chest, I make a decision. This time, I won't sound another alarm. This time, I'll let them walk straight into the fire they're so eager to light. But I'll make damn sure everyone knows who struck the match. The next 3 weeks become my masterclass in strategic documentation, while Ethan celebrates his upcoming disruption with champagne toasts in the break room. I work with the precision of a surgeon preparing for an operation that will save the patient by removing the cancer. Every evening at 6 p.m., after most of the office has emptied, I begin my real work. My personal laptop, never connected to the company network, becomes a vault of evidence. Screenshot by screenshot, I build an irrefutable case. The email where Ethan explicitly instructs the development team to bury the unsubscribe button where no one will find it. The Slack message where he jokes about customer prisoners, not customer partners. The memo where he overrides the legal team's objections with a simple, "I'll take responsibility." I photograph everything with my phone as backup. Old school paranoia from my early days in risk management. 2 copies of everything, 1 digital, 1 physical. The physical copies go into a safety deposit box at a bank across town. The digital ones live on an encrypted drive that never enters the Bridgestone building. Marcus from legal becomes an unwitting ally. At lunch on a Tuesday, he slides a folder across the table. "You didn't get this from me," he says quietly, stirring his coffee with unnecessary focus. But someone should know that our merchant agreement actually has a whistleblower clause. Page 47, subsection C. I don't open the folder until I'm in my car. Inside a highlighted copy of our payment processor contract, showing exactly how to report violations while maintaining legal protection. Marcus has even bookmarked the federal regulations Ethan's about to break, complete with case precedents. The IT department makes my job easier than they know. Every system modification for Operation Retain requires risk assessment approval. My approval. I approve everything, but not before documenting every request, every change, every line of code that will eventually burn this house down. I create 2 reports for each approval, one for the company files that says approved with standard considerations, and one for my records that details every violation, every risk, every inevitable consequence. On October 28th, at 3:45 p.m., I watch Ethan sign the final implementation order. His signature is bold, confident, the kind of autograph he probably practiced in business school. I make sure to get a perfect scan of it, alongside the risk assessment he dismissed. The juxtaposition is almost artistic, willful ignorance documented in blue ink. My preparations extend beyond just documentation. I establish relationships I've never needed before, a courtesy call to our payment processor's compliance department. Just checking on some technical details about our contract, a coffee meeting with a friend at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Catching up on industry trends, a lunch with a financial journalist who covers fintech, where I mention absolutely nothing about Bridgestone, but learn exactly how quickly they can publish once they receive a tip. The most crucial piece comes from an unexpected source. Robert's executive assistant, Margaret, who's been with the company since the garage days, stops by my office one evening. "You know," she says, adjusting her glasses, "Mr. Caldwell, the senior one, he always reads his emails at 5 a.m. sharp. Never misses a day. Just thought you should know, in case you ever need to send anything time-sensitive." She leaves before I can respond, but the message is clear. Even the old guard sees what's coming. I create my triggers carefully, an automated email system, set to deploy if I don't reset it every week, a package with a law firm, to be opened if I'm suddenly terminated, a series of scheduled reports to regulatory bodies, currently in draft form, one click away from sending. But the masterpiece is the timeline I build, a minute-by-minute reconstruction of every meeting, every decision, every moment where someone could have stopped this but chose not to. It reads like a corporate thriller, except every word is verified, every claim supported by evidence. On Halloween night, as children trick-or-treat in my suburban neighborhood, I sit in my home office reviewing everything one last time. 3 weeks of evidence, organized with the precision of a federal prosecutor, emails, contracts, recordings from meetings where I was careful to announce, "I'm documenting this for compliance purposes," before hitting record on my phone. Tomorrow, Ethan launches Operation Retain. The website changes go live at midnight. The new billing practices start at 12:01 a.m. The first customers will try to unsubscribe and find themselves trapped in a maze of broken links and hidden buttons. I close my laptop and pour myself a glass of wine. Outside, a group of kids dressed as superheroes runs past my window. How fitting. Tomorrow, Ethan thinks he's going to be the hero of his own success story. He has no idea he's about to become the villain in mine. November 1st, 12:01 a.m., Operation Retain goes live, and I watch from my laptop at home as the first dominoes begin to tip. The customer service queue, usually showing single digits at this hour, climbs to 20, then 50, then stops displaying numbers and just shows a red, high-volume warning. By 9 a.m. When I arrive at the office, the atmosphere has shifted from celebration to confusion. The customer service team huddles in crisis mode, their manager looking like she hasn't slept. Ethan, however, stands at the center of the main floor, still playing conductor to his symphony of chaos. "This is expected turbulence," he announces to anyone within earshot. "Disruption always meets resistance. We stay the course." I wait exactly 72 hours, long enough for the chargeback rate to spike to 3.1%, long enough for the customer complaints to pile up on social media, long enough for Ethan to send his triumphant email about record retention rates to the entire company. At 4:15 p.m. on November 3rd, I execute the first strike. The email to our payment processor's compliance department is clinical, professional, and devastating. I report the violation as required under the whistleblower clause Marcus had highlighted. Attach 37 pages of documentation showing deliberate obstruction of cancellation processes, with chargeback rates and customer complaints as supporting evidence. I copy my personal attorney on the email, establishing legal protection. The second strike follows an hour later, an anonymous tip to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, sent through a VPN from a coffee shop laptop I bought with cash. This package is more comprehensive. It includes internal communications, the dismissed risk assessment, and a helpful timeline showing exactly who knew what and when they chose to ignore it. I don't have to wait long for the response. November 5th, 8:47 a.m. Margaret forwards me an email with just 2 words. It's starting. The payment processor's notification arrives in Robert Caldwell's inbox at 9 a.m. sharp. They're initiating a rolling reserve effective immediately. 30% of all processed payments will be held for 90 days pending investigation. The email explicitly cites reported violations of merchant agreement terms regarding customer cancellation processes. I'm in the break room when the explosion happens, calmly pouring coffee as Ethan's voice carries down the hallway from his father's office. "This is insane. We're being sabotaged. Someone is trying to destroy everything we've built." Jennifer, the CFO, appears in the break room, her face pale. "Did you see the payment processor notice?" "I received a copy," I reply, stirring my coffee slowly. "It was flagged for risk assessment review. Can we fight it?" I take a sip before answering. "We could try, of course. That would require proving we haven't violated any terms, under oath, with full discovery." She understands immediately, her face going from pale to gray. By noon, the CFPB investigation letter arrives. By 2 p.m., our largest institutional investor calls an emergency meeting. By 3 p.m., the financial journalist I'd met for coffee publishes a piece titled Bridgestone Dynamics Under Investigation for Alleged Consumer Protection Violations. Ethan calls an all-hands meeting at 4 p.m. He stands at the podium, his Tom Ford suit slightly wrinkled, his Harvard tie clip askew. "These are coordinated attacks from competitors threatened by our innovation," he declares. "We will not be deterred by—" "Mr. Caldwell?" interrupts James Morrison, our largest investor, joining virtually on the main screen. "We need to see the risk assessments for this operation, immediately." The room goes silent. 200 employees watch as Ethan's face cycles through emotions like a broken traffic light. The risk assessment was reviewed and integrated into our planning. He stammers. I want to see it, now. I stand from my seat in the back, my movement drawing every eye in the room. I have a copy, I say, my voice carrying clearly. Would you like me to share it on screen? James Morrison nods. Please do. I walk to the front, past Ethan, whose face has gone from red to white. I connect my laptop, pull up the file, and there it is. 47 pages of warnings, projections, and legal violations, dated 3 weeks ago, and at the bottom of the executive summary, in bold text, recommendation: do not proceed with Operation Retain as currently designed. Mr. Caldwell? Morrison's voice cuts through the silence like a blade. Was this assessment presented to you? Ethan's mouth opens, closes, opens again, behind him, on the screen. Page 17 displays his own signature on the rolling reserve clause he'd forgotten he'd signed. The conclusions were deemed irrelevant to our strategic. Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Morrison interrupts. Please send that document to the board immediately. Mr. Caldwell, the younger Mr. Caldwell, will be discussing your position at tomorrow's emergency board meeting. The call ends. The room remains frozen. Ethan stands at the podium like a statue made of ambition and hairspray, watching his future dissolve in real time. I close my laptop, tuck it under my arm, and walk back to my seat. The sound of my heels on the floor is the only noise in a room full of people learning what happens when you ignore the person whose job it is to see the cliff before you drive off it. The collapse accelerates with mathematical precision, like watching a building demolition in slow motion. Each support beam fails exactly when the engineers calculated it would. November 6th, 7 a.m., the payment processor's rolling reserve kicks in, and 30% of yesterday's revenue, $4.2 million, gets locked away. Jennifer sends a department-wide email about temporary cash flow adjustments. The accounts payable team starts making phone calls to vendors, negotiating payment extensions we've never needed before. By 10 a.m., the customer service department reports they're receiving 300 complaints per hour. The word fraud appears in 40% of them. Our social media manager, a usually cheerful 25-year-old named Ashley, looks like she's aged 5 years overnight. We're trending, she tells me in the elevator. Not in a good way. The CFPB investigators arrive at 1 p.m., 3 people in dark suits who set up in conference room B like they're planning to stay a while. They request 5 years of customer data, all communications regarding Operation Retain, and, this is where Ethan's face truly crumbles, all personal emails from company devices. They can't do that, Ethan protests to Marcus from legal. Marcus adjusts his glasses, choosing his words carefully. Actually, they can. Page 12 of your employment contract, which you signed, grants the company rights to all communications on company devices, and we're obligated to comply with federal investigations. I pass conference room B on my way to lunch, catching a glimpse of boxes being filled with printed emails. One investigator is highlighting passages with the focused intensity of someone who's found exactly what they're looking for. At 2:30 p.m., an internal audit alert pops up on my screen. Someone in accounting has discovered what they're calling irregularities in revenue reporting. Customers who tried to cancel but couldn't were still being counted as active subscribers, inflating our numbers by nearly 20%. The audit team wants to know who authorized this accounting method. The answer, of course, is in an email Ethan sent 2 weeks ago. Count them until they actually leave. If they can't leave, they're still customers. He'd CC'd half the finance team. He'd even added a smiley face emoji. Robert Caldwell hasn't been seen since yesterday's all-hands disaster. His office door remains closed. But Margaret tells me he's been on calls with board members since 5 a.m. 40 years building this company, she says quietly, arranging papers on her desk with unnecessary precision. 40 years. At 3:45 p.m., our stock price drops 12% in 30 minutes. Someone has leaked the investigation to Wall Street. The financial channels pick it up immediately. CNBC runs a segment titled "Fintech High Flyer Faces Turbulence." They even have a clever graphic of a plane nosediving. The development team starts distancing themselves from Operation Retain like it's radioactive. The lead developer, Sam, forwards me an email chain showing how he'd raised concerns about the hidden unsubscribe buttons but was overruled. "Just wanted to make sure you have this for your records," he writes. Everyone's suddenly very interested in documentation. At 4 p.m., 3 major enterprise clients call to express concerns about reputational association. Translation: they're ready to jump ship if this gets worse. Our biggest client, a healthcare company that processes 2 million transactions monthly through our platform, requests an emergency meeting to discuss alternative arrangements. The vendor payment situation deteriorates by 5 p.m. Our primary server provider, owed $600,000, threatens to suspend services if payment isn't received within 48 hours, with 30% of our cash flow frozen. Jennifer has to make choices. She chooses to pay salaries first, vendors second, and executive bonuses not at all. This triggers another Ethan meltdown, this time in the main office where everyone can see. "This is temporary," he shouts at Jennifer. "We can't show weakness now. Pay everything, borrow if we have to." "From whom?" Jennifer asks calmly. "Our credit line requires board approval for any draw over $1 million. The board is currently deciding whether you still work here." The marketing team, previously Ethan's biggest cheerleaders, starts updating their LinkedIn profiles. I count 7 open-to-work badges by the end of the day. 6 p.m., I'm packing up when an email arrives from the payment processor. They've completed their preliminary review. Effective immediately, our reserve rate increases to 50%, and they're extending the holding period to 180 days. The email includes a helpful calculation at current transaction volumes. We'll have $23 million frozen within 2 weeks. I forward it to the board, CCing Ethan with just 4 words, "per your earlier request." By 7 p.m., someone leaks our actual Q4 projections to the Financial Journalist. The headline writes itself: "Bridgestone Dynamics faces 80% profit decline amid compliance crisis." The article includes a particularly damning quote from an internal source familiar with risk assessments, stating that all of this was preventable and predicted. I drive home through the Chicago evening traffic, watching the city lights blur past. My phone buzzes constantly. Messages from colleagues, reporters, recruiters who smell blood in the water. I ignore them all. Tomorrow is the emergency board meeting. Tomorrow. Ethan faces the consequences of believing his last name made him invincible. Tomorrow. 40 years of Robert Caldwell's legacy gets weighed against 3 months of his son's hubris. Tonight, I pour a glass of wine and open my personal laptop. One more email to send, this one to James Morrison, our largest investor. Subject line: Comprehensive Risk Timeline. For tomorrow's discussion. Attached everything. November 7th, 8 a.m. The emergency board meeting convenes in the executive conference room, the one with the original incorporation documents framed on the wall. I arrive early, choosing a seat at the back, my binder placed precisely on the table in front of me. The board members file in like pallbearers at a funeral. James Morrison leads them, his face carved from stone. Behind him, 4 other major investors, each controlling enough shares to matter. Robert Caldwell sits at the head of the table, looking like he's aged a decade in 3 days. Ethan enters last, still in his expensive suit but missing his usual swagger. "Gentlemen, ladies," Morrison begins without preamble, "we're here to address an existential crisis. Ms. Morgan, would you please join us at the main table?" I gather my materials and move forward, taking a seat directly across from Ethan. His eyes meet mine for a second before darting away. "Let's start with facts," Morrison continues. "Current chargeback rate. 4.7% as of this morning," Jennifer reports. "Customer complaints. 1,200 in the last 24 hours. The customer service director responds. Frozen revenue. 16 million currently, projected to reach 40 million by month's end," Jennifer adds. Morrison nods at each number like he's checking items off a execution list. Mr. Caldwell, Ethan, would you like to explain how we got here? Ethan stands, his prepared speech ready. This is a coordinated attack on our innovation. Competitors have weaponized the regulatory system against us. We need to fight back, not retreat. If we show weakness now. Sit down, Morrison says quietly. Ethan blinks. I'm not finished. Yes, you are, Ms. Morgan. Please show the board page 17 of your risk assessment. I open the binder, pull out copies I'd prepared, and distribute them. Page 17, the smoking gun. Ethan's signature acknowledging the rolling reserve clause, dated 3 months ago. Mr. Caldwell, Morrison addresses Ethan. You signed this agreement. You were informed of the consequences. Is this your signature? Ethan's lawyer, who I hadn't noticed before, whispers urgently in his ear. Ethan nods slowly. Yes, but... Ms. Morgan, please share your timeline of warnings issued regarding Operation Retain. I pull out a single sheet, a chronological list with dates, times, and meeting minutes. 7 formal warnings, 3 written assessments, 2 emergency escalations, all dismissed or ignored. October 10th, 2:15 p.m. I read. Risk assessment presented indicating probable violation of merchant agreements. Response, these conclusions are not relevant. October 15th, 9:30 a.m. Email warning of potential CFPB investigation. Response, innovation requires accepting regulatory friction. October 22nd, 4 p.m. Final warning of cascading cash flow crisis. Response email deleted. No formal acknowledgement. Board member David Walsh, who built his fortune in traditional banking, leans forward. Ethan, you received all these warnings. They were pessimistic projections based on worst-case thinking. That all came true, Walsh interrupts. Every single one. The room falls silent. Through the glass walls, I can see employees pretending to work while obviously watching the meeting. There's more, Morrison says. Ms. Morgan, the accounting irregularities. I produce another document. Customers who attempted cancellation but were prevented by the hidden unsubscribe functions were still counted as active revenue. This inflated our Q4 projections by approximately $18 million. That's fraud, Walsh states flatly. Robert Caldwell finally speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. Ethan, tell me you didn't know about this. Ethan's face crumbles. Dad, Don't. Robert holds up a hand. Just don't. Morrison pulls out his phone, checks something, then looks up. Our stock is down another 8% this morning. We've lost $300 million in market cap in 3 days. The CFPB is recommending criminal charges for deliberate consumer fraud. Our largest clients are invoking their exit clauses. He stands, walking to the window overlooking the Chicago skyline. 40 years ago, Robert, you started this company with a simple principle: earn trust through transparency. Your son has destroyed that in 3 months. There's a solution, board member Patricia Yang interjects. We cooperate fully with investigators. We immediately reverse all Operation Retain changes. We establish an independent compliance committee reporting directly to the board, and, she pauses, looking directly at Ethan. We make immediate leadership changes. You can't just, Ethan starts. We can and we will. Morrison cuts him off. The question is whether your father remains CEO. Robert's head snaps up. James, you allowed this, Robert. Your signature is on the approval. Either you didn't know, which is negligence, or you did know, which is complicity. The accusation hangs in the air like a blade. However, Morrison continues, if you agree to transition to Chairman Emeritus, with Ms. Morgan heading a new compliance committee with full autonomy, we might weather this. All eyes turn to me. I maintain my composure, though inside, my heart races. Ms. Morgan, Morrison addresses me directly. Would you accept such a position? I look at my binder, at the months of warnings ignored, at Ethan's pale face, at Robert's destroyed expression. With conditions, I reply. Name them? Full autonomy means full autonomy. No operational interference from any Caldwell family member. Direct reporting to the board. Authority to reverse any decision that violates compliance standards. And I pause, meeting Ethan's eyes. Immediate termination of all executives who knowingly participated in Operation Retain. Ethan shoots to his feet. This is a coup. You planned this. No, I respond calmly. You planned this. I just documented it. The vote happens quickly, almost anticlimactically. 5 board members, 5 raised hands. Unanimous. Ethan Caldwell is terminated effective immediately, along with 3 vice presidents who championed Operation Retain. Robert Caldwell transitions to Chairman Emeritus, a title that sounds prestigious but carries no operational authority, and I become Chief Compliance Officer with a compensation package that makes my hands slightly tremble as Morrison outlines it. 3 times your current salary, Morrison states matter-of-factly. Performance bonuses tied to regulatory compliance metrics, stock options vesting over 4 years, and a signing bonus to compensate for the, shall we say, hostile work environment you've endured. Ethan's face cycles through disbelief, rage, and finally something that